If you're given like 208 billion Kenya shillings, what would you do with it in your different sectors?
We always tell farmers, you need to put in your data, we need to digitize. It's work.
Because the public health sector, you have a lot of data. Like Kenya is rich in terms of the data set that we collect.
Oh, wow. I feel like, do you guys want to run for president? No, I'm kidding.
Google Earth Engine came into play and I was like, wow, new tool.
Yeah. This conversation really hones in on the realities of working with data in some of the most important sectors in this country.
Yes. Let's bring the geospatial experts, the data experts, the software people at the very beginning, not towards the end. We've decided this is what we want to build, take and build.
Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Geo Habari podcast. I am your host, Yariwo Kitiyo, with yet again a really exciting episode. And this one is one for the books because it's an all-female panel or conversation for the first time ever on the pod. So I'm really excited for this one. And maybe just to give context to this conversation and why we're here, let me paraphrase and give out a couple of statements we keep hearing. One is data is very important. Data has impact. We need data. Africa is data scarce. We have data. And so I think in between these phrases and wordings, there's space between data and real world outcomes. And I think that's the conversation piece we never talk about. We normally just jump to data and impact. I think having data does not necessarily translate to impact, right? And so this conversation really hones in on the realities of working with data in some of the most important sectors in this country, and that's agriculture and health. And so welcome to another episode. This is a very refreshing one, and I'm so excited to do this with two of the most brilliant minds in this space of agriculture, health, and climate, and that intersection. So allow me to welcome Nancy Kinyua and Lisa Mbwia to this episode of the Geo Habari podcast. Hi,
Thank
guys.
you. Hello.
Hi.
Did I do you guys justice with the intro?
Oh, yes.
So I'm so excited to have you guys on set. We've been wanting to do this from last year, by the way. And so I'm really happy that we are finally here. But I think before we start, we'll have them introduce themselves using their own words. And then we'll jump into the conversation. What comes? Is it L or MNOP? You first. L first. L first. Sorry, Fofo has me cramming alphabets. Yeah, L and then N. Yeah. Lisa, you can introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Mbwia, a data professional. I work in the intersection of environment, climate, geospatial data in the agriculture sector. And my work is to look at building data systems in the climate sector. Mostly the sub-Saharan area. I haven't really experienced other countries, but yeah, sub-Saharan area. I think, Nancy, you can go.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you as well for having us here. My name is Nancy Kinyua. I'm a geospatial data scientist, a data analyst, M&E expert. Like there's a lot to it in the data space, depending on where you're working and what you're doing. So my work mostly in the last few years has been in the public health space as a data analyst, supporting programs in terms of scoping, understanding the right questions to ask around data. What data do we collect? Supporting the collection of data analysis, and also capacity building in terms of teams on the ground, how to use data or how to use these systems to collect data and why we are collecting the same data. So, yeah, that's just about me.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming on set. And if you've had the intro, you can tell they work within the entire pipeline or the entire breadth of from data collection to making systems that actually work and inform decisions in the different sectors. So agriculture, climate, and health. I think maybe just for guys who don't read the news, why health is a really important, and even agriculture. Well, I don't need to emphasize on how agriculture is such a bedrock in this country, right? And part of it is the feeding systems that go behind it, the data sets, the systems that inform policy, and then the healthcare, which has been taking a lot of hit. We had the funding pull recently from the US government. We've had deals happening across the continent. I think Rwanda recently had a deal with Anthropic. So there's a lot happening in the tech space, right? I think that makes this conversation really timely, but also very important. So before we start, I normally start starting with quick fires. So I'm going to have you guys, dream as much as you can. So let's start with, if you are given, let me look for a figure. If you're given like 208 billion Kenya shillings, what would you do with it in your different sectors? And you had the freedom to do whatever you wanted to do with it. Where would that money go? I think, Lisa, yours would be in agri-tech and climate. How would you use that money? Yours would be in health and systems. How would you use that money? Just out of curiosity on how your minds think. You can blow it, but billion. I don't know if you can say you'll blow it, but
can't really blow it. I think from one of the cases that we've done, and mostly because I'm always intrigued in the agriculture, something that I stumbled upon. First, small-scale producers. I think you need to start on the ground. There's access to inputs. That's the first particular aspect. But how do they even get to receive the inputs? How do they know their inputs being provided by the government, and also the type of inputs that are being provided by the government? I think also just the data connection between now having the farmers access these inputs, where are they putting it on the ground? How heavy is the data work to make a farmer put this, say they are collecting this data and saying this is the proper way they're feeding into the systems. So now, for me, as an example, as a small-scale producer, I'm trying to, we always tell farmers, you need to put in your data, we need to digitize. It's work.
Yeah.
It's operational work. And I think that's where we get a disjoint. How comfortable should we make this particular system and easier for small-scale producers to be able to access this data? So that obviously the bulk of the work usually sits there. But when it's already stable, the rest usually now becomes easier in terms of the scale, access, scalability, connections in terms of the type of data that you're looking at. So I would typically say, and based on the work that I've done, and it's, I think, a very key important thing, your small-scale producers contribute a lot to the economy.
They do, yeah.
And the type of data systems you anticipate that a farmer will be able to digitize their land, even just having a simple basic phone to be able to put in farm data is the most key part for me before we say now we are going to feed this data into the county. Because most of the times you have weather reports, you have all those things, you have a seed program, and the seed doesn't suit the soil or the ground.
Yeah.
And now you really haven't done anything. So from the ground up. That's where I would heavily focus people before, I'm not saying not before systems, but people understand people's behaviors before you say you're going to put in a full system.
I really like that.
Yeah.
You're going to put that money, bridging the gap between the small-scale farmer and the data and systems angle of it from that granular level.
Yeah.
Curious where you'll put yours.
Similar, but from a different angle, because the public health sector, you have a lot of data. Like Kenya is rich in terms of the data set that we collect. Yeah. Every facility collects data. We have this program right now whereby the community health is the foundation of the public health sector at the moment. When we mean community health, we mean that our community health promoters are the ones on the ground collecting data. I don't know if you've heard of this system called ICHIS, Electronic Community Health Information System. So a very powerful system whereby the volunteers collect household information, and it covers everything inside the household. And this data is what is informing our decisions around public health. So when you say Kenya is data rich, but the issue we have is the quality of the data to start with. And also the community health promoters collecting the data. Have they been capacity built in such a way that they understand why we're collecting this data? Are they utilizing that data themselves? So 208 billion would go into trying and improving the quality of this data in terms of capacity building our CHPs. There's those called community health assistants, the health facility on how to utilize the data, because we can't be collecting data down there, but then it's only being utilized at national levels. How can we capacity build them to be able to utilize data at those lower levels? So improve the quality of the data, capacity build them also to understand why do we need to improve the quality and what is it being used for. So,
Oh, wow. I feel like, do you guys want to run for president? No, I'm kidding, but that was really insightful. And I've picked a lot of things even from what you guys have talked about, right? And so I want us to get into what you guys do, right? One of the gaps I've always had when I was getting into the industry, I used to struggle a lot with linking my schoolwork and what that would look like in the real world, right? And so I'm curious to know, from that perspective, what do you guys do? And how do you solve these problems? Just based on, because we already have a rough idea of what you guys do, based on what you've said, where you'll put the money. But for someone who's trying to figure out, but what do they actually do? So let's get into that. What do you guys do, and what problems do you guys solve? Actually, that's the right question. What problems do you solve, and how do you solve it? From both an agri-tech perspective and then public health angle as well. What does that look like? I don't know who wants to go first.
I can go first on this one. So for me, what exactly do I do? When I got into the space, the first one, I remember my first project was exemplar utilization of grade 3 data, which was funded by the Gates Foundation. So what is exemplar utilization? It was to support programs to use geospatial data. So to start with, not everybody utilizes geospatial data in decision making, and it's very key and it's very important. So the very first project or the very first task is to help people understand what is geospatial data and how can we use it to support your decision, whether it's understanding vulnerability in terms of vulnerable populations, accessibility, where do we have low access, maybe accessibility challenges in terms of reaching a facility, in terms of reaching a service, distribution of products, like you're doing distributing cervical cancer test kits for testing and treating. Have you distributed them to the populations that actually matter? So what do I do? First of all, help you understand what is geospatial data, how can you utilize it in your work, then support program work, whether it's scoping, trying to understand where do we put the money in terms of where do we send the resources. Also support now reporting in terms of this is what we've done, this is the impact that we've been able to achieve in this space in terms of immunization. Where are we seeing zero-dose children? How can that help in terms of targeting resources to actually get those zero-dose children? So it's more of decision support and also take up of geospatial data. And not just geospatial data, every other data. All data.
What would you say yours is the problem and how you solve it?
Just as Nancy had already previously started going into the sector, for me it was more of a stumble. I keep saying stumble upon, but it was one of those best opportunities that I've seen. My first serious geospatial data project or geospatial data project that I was working on was a sugarcane project based in Malawi. It was a scheme for small-scale producers, and they were looking at creating an early warning system for sugarcane production. Remember, considering sugarcane is produced for bioethanol in Malawi to add into the fuel. So that for me was how does crop production systems actually work in terms of building an early warning system. So I think it was more of, I went in with, this is the type of algorithm that you can kind of use and all those other things, got to learn that you need to collect the data. How consistently will people collect this kind of data? How do the language barrier, will they understand if it's written in English? Or will the concept be the same when you're doing the explanation on the ground? Then now, how do you get to ensure that this data keeps flowing every single time? What is the incentivizing process of you making sure that this data is being received at the particular office and it's being processed at that time? I think it led to more of these projects where now we had to do mapping of small scale producer farms, finding out that in Africa, you have less than 0.3 hectares of land that are owned by small scale producers. How can satellite imagery map such areas? How can you extrapolate vegetation indices into these particular areas to determine the growth rate or the growth aspect for these particular crops? And I think it was more of we manually downloaded the satellite imagery until Google Earth Engine came into play, and I was like, wow, new tool.
Yeah.
And you had to do batch production. So you imagine you're doing 5,000 batch pieces of to 10,000 batches, so that you can process the vegetation values and you can be able to map these areas. I think eventually it went to a whole, how do you provide decision? How do you provide support to these particular farmers? What are they experiencing? It was even more than, yes, inputs, but is the soil doing well? That was also another key issue. How do you geopoint soil location so you can be able to pick up spectral information about the soil information and tell the farmer, your soils are missing this, and what is the key issue in particular regions. So so it was mostly you do the data, you feed it in, you find another issue, you find a solution, go back to the field, kind of the same thing. That's what I've typically done mostly with my work.
I really like that, even how both of you have painted the picture, because normally I don't think people realize how working with data is not like a straight line. There's a lot of back and forth and reiteration until you figure out, okay, this is where the problem is. And then now I like what you've talked about, like how for Africa, we have a lot of small scale farmers. A lot of our land is not vast and we are all planting the same crops, right? There's intercropping, there's so many things that are so different in our landscape. And I really like that because in the previous episode, Dr. Pamela talks about that in a very vivid way, in how that's why even satellite imagery needs to work for us, because our spectral indices are so different. You're intercropping, so that means there's maize here, there's beans here, there's probably cashew nut and pumpkin. I don't know, like our complexities are so... Yeah, we have complexities when it comes to working with our data. And so I want us to transition to the data angle of it. Should we transition to data or impact first? Yeah, I think data. Yeah. So let's get to the data, because that's basically the raw material that we are using. That's our goal when it comes to data analysis. And it's how we manage to inform decision. And I like what you guys have in your profiles. So both of you, what's key in both of yours is you're both in the space of building systems that don't just sit there, they actually inform strategy and programs within Kenya and outside of it, right? You referenced Malawi as one example. I know you've worked in a couple of sub-Saharan African countries, both of you, right? And so when it comes to the data sets, maybe for a start, if we took a random data set, what's a random data set? I think for yours, we've talked about immunization, cervical cancer. So there's different health data sets. And then for yours, there's agriculture, so sugarcane, soils. If we took one data set in your ecosystem and followed its life cycle, what does that look like? For those who want to first understand, what are these data sets they deal with? Where do they come from? What's the life cycle before it actually gets to impact? Because I think that's where there's normally there's normally like such a huge space. Because normally, and that's something we also need to kill as a myth. Guys, just because we have data, or just because you have data, does not mean there's impact, or does not mean that's all you need to do. There's a lot that happens in between, from analytics, pipelining, stakeholder engagement, yada yada. She's talked about language. Do you need to translate it, right? So if we were to follow that, what does that look like for any of you before we even get to so we can understand your ecosystems before we can get into the analytics bit of it, how you inform that or how you handle that, right? If we were to follow one, what does that pathway look like? To just understand the kind of complexities you're handling. You can pick from any random project and just walk us through it. Like, it was collected here, went here.
Okay, so one of the projects that I'm currently working on, it's a short-term thing. It's a conservation type of project. Conservation with converting it into the conservation materials, they're converting it into a specific thing that they're going to use on a piece of land. So the data collection starts at how are people collecting these materials from the ocean? How are they sorting it? Is it clean? Then there is now going to the lab. There is a lot of checkpoints to make it sure that it goes through different levels. Then there is sorting that particular data. And remember, you have to know where it came from. Because different areas, different soil types, it could not even be a different type of soil type, but different nutrients capacities because of the area or something in terms of the wave motion. And all the way till monitoring. And this is just one data set.
Yeah.
So you've collected plastics. What is it going to be used all the way through till the end? You've collected you're managing mangroves, the location of the mangroves, what type of mangroves are you looking at in terms of the species, all the way till can you be able to move it to from one location on the beachfront to the next location to be able to increase your mangrove capacity. So that's just one example. I can't really talk about the others because they're quite, I was told a bit of an NDA.
Yeah, but that means also as you're doing that, there's different players handling it, right? It's literally there's many people handling it within that entire, all right. Yes. Health, what does that look like?
I'm going to take a very interesting angle because when we talk of data, we talk of now of data that we are collecting right now, that we know of right now. Yeah. But then there's the historical kind of data. I will go to that point. I've had the privilege of being part of the team that is working on currently proving that onchocerciasis is eliminated in Kenya. What is onchocerciasis?
Yeah, I was just looking at you like, no. Okay.
Yeah. So onchocerciasis is also known as river blindness. It is a disease that is caused by some parasite, a black fly that bites you and moves some virus. Is it virus? I'm not an expert, so my language might be off at some point. So in Kenya, river blindness was eliminated in the 1950s.
So it's it's for the eye?
Yeah, it causes, it has, when it bites you and leaves that, what do I call nodules? I'm forgetting the name in you. So they start building up nodules and then stays in your body for some time. And then after a long time, these nodules, there's the skin being leopard-like and stuff. There's a lot of... Don't worry, it's not in Kenya. It's not in Kenya. And then towards the very end, you get now river blindness because it affects your eyes as well. Right. So you get blind. But that's towards the very end. If it's discovered early, it's treatable. This is all the things I've learned. Let me tell you the things I've learned about public health. Health.
I'm just like you might as well be a doctor at this point. I
am not. But and they're not very accurate. So just go and check. So Kenya eliminated onchocerciasis early in the 1950s. But for for the World Health Organization to prove, to name you as having actually eliminated it, you have to prove you've actually eliminated it. This is in the 1950s. Yeah. The current program, how do they know that it was actually eliminated? You have to do a process called elimination mapping to prove it was actually eliminated. So where do you start? You go digging for historical data on where were the foci points, where was this disease endemic. Collect that data, map it. Actually, there's a lot of mapping work in trying to prove it because you have to prepare a document called a dossier for the World Health Organization. So collect the historical data, whether it's go to the museum, understand the vector, there's entomology into it. There's just a lot. There's environmental factors. You look at vegetation because this black fly thrives in specific location, fast flowing rivers, so rapids, and at certain altitudes and temperatures and all that. So map this kind of information, get the historical data, understand which areas were endemic, which activities were undertaken in that time and period to see that it was eliminated. So at that point, what they did was spraying of some chemicals to rid of the black flies. So there's no transmission, but then you have to prove it. So collect historical data. Again, very manual. Go to I've said museums, look at documentations at the Ministry of Health, pick this data, map it. I remember getting mapping points for locations one by one. You see how they didn't know now location. They were just like, we got these from Rihanna Forest, this village, this.
Yeah.
Yes, doing the manual work of digitizing it, mapping it, understanding how that distribution looked like, so that if people are going back to do some entomological studies to prove actually we do not have these black flies in this region, they know the exact location to go and do that.
Yeah.
So this historical data set, current data set about environmental factors, again, this has to do with climate, because if you're saying it thrives at certain altitudes and temperatures and forested areas, you have to look at all those factors. Prove that these are the areas that we don't have that black fly because the environment is not that conducive. So there's that pipeline. Get your historical data, get current data, and be able to just go back to the ground whereby there could be possible breeding sites and collect again new data to prove we do not have these parasites, we do not have people infected with the disease. And then now, if the World Health Organization reviews all this information and the documentations, and they see that that is working, they're able now to certify you as having eliminated the disease. So we could be thinking data we need right now, but there's also historical data. So storage of data right now is very important. You have to document well, you have to store it well, so for future, just in case something happens.
Guys, thank you so much. For guys who are listening, especially guys in Campo, I hope this gives you a really good understanding of the realities of outside campus and how data sometimes looks like, and the different players or handoffs that have to handle it before it even gets to you sometimes, right? And I like that you've also brought in the secondary data. Yeah, that's secondary data. That going actually to libraries and looking at the historicals, that gives us a really good example of what the data ecosystem looks like. It's not a clean one pathway where it's just like, okay, here, okay, I'm done, here, take it. There's clearly a lot based on their realities. And then so let's get into some of the disconnects you see working in the different ecosystems, right? Whether it's project you've been directly involved with, or even outside when you're just assessing Kenya's data ecosystem from both an agriculture, not even Kenya's, because you work even outside of Kenya. When you just look at how we handle data, how we use data, are there disconnects you see, and what would those disconnects look like? Directly or indirectly, or just, or even on people's LinkedIn posts, right? When you look at them, from an assessment perspective, where do you see the biggest data disconnects in how we handle data? Because I know you talked about one of the key things we have a problem with is we have data, but there's a quality problem. The other theory I've also seen in media stations is we are a very data scarce continent. I sometimes find myself debating with that, but I feel like we have data. Maybe there's just problems around what that data looks like.
Both are true, I think.
Both are true. It's both
there
angles.
There are sectors that have a lot of data. They have rich data. And like the first issue I said was in terms of the data quality. But then the second issue was also the usage. Like you have data, but utilization of the same.
Right.
They are not utilizing the data. Like it's sitting in databases. It's just you're collecting. And that's where the quality gets bad. Because if you're collecting data that you're not utilizing, so if the person collecting the data, why should they care about the quality of data they collect?
I thought about usage.
Why do they care? I'll just go collect my data. If I've not collected, I'll cook.
Yes.
You want to see data. Their systems are collecting data. I'll keep putting the data into the system. So utilization of data. If we utilize data, we're able to catch some of these issues early in terms of the discrepancies, in terms of understanding the trends, seeing outbreaks early, like that's in the public health space, because you're actually utilizing, and not just utilizing at the national level only, but again, like I said, every granular level, the national, the county, the sub-county, the ward, the facility that is actually collecting the data, having access to their own data and utilizing the data. It helps them improve the quality even as the time goes by. And scarcity. I know in some other fields it's scarce. If you go to agriculture, maybe I don't know. You'll find it's scarce because it's not being collected at such a big national scale. Like the data health is the way it's centralized. So every partner is
collecting their data.
Data. So there's it's siloed in different places. And you don't know, do I know Lisa to get data from Lisa. Like I want some climate data in Kajiado or livestock data.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look at the One Health lens of environment, health and animals, health, all that. Where do I get the number of livestock in Kajiado, the type of diseases, if they are given that dips and all that. Yeah.
So I think for me, it's also there's interoperability, and then there is the sharing and duplicity. So as she had mentioned, you would have organizations collecting the same kind of data, going to the same region, doing just a slight different KPI to the type of work that your organization is doing. But there isn't a synchronization of that kind of data. And yes, humans are humans.
Yeah.
So if you're coming to help me and you're 10 of you as an organization, you're coming to help me and you're funding me and you're giving me anything, I'm not going to say, well, so-and-so is helping me, so I am not going to receive your help. So that's the one thing that as humans, it's all over. But as humans, it's there. If you want to help me. Oh, this is a lot of help. It starts off genuinely, but then at the end of it all, it's like quite repetitive. And sometimes you do have people who have been overtrained. You're saying, no, we're going to this area, going to collect this information, or we're going to train them to collect this information. And you find that they're actually overtrained and they're not moving to the next level. And now they're so used to it and they're like, this is where I'm going to earn my income. So you have like stagnation of the data, repetition of the data, duplicity, just that it has just changed its name or structure in that particular database. So I think we don't have that aspect where you link that. And then there is also separation of the type of data sets that you're looking at. So if you're looking at, for instance, Nancy has mentioned, but if you're looking at you're trying to map specific areas, for instance, you're doing forest ecology or whatever thing it is, you're going to look at the climate data, but where you get proper climate data. You're looking at fire hazard data. How are you going to get that information? You have to look at wind data. You have to look at all these other aspects that contribute to maybe that forest growing and any other thing before you say, okay, now this is a solid thing that you're working on. So data could be sitting in different organizations, and the organizations could be one, but they're different.
Yeah.
And also the type, how they've stored it, the naming conventions. So you'd find you've stored it as first name, second, last name. The other one has done it. Last name, first name. So that part is where now I'm like, okay, it could be the same data. It could not be the same data. It could be the same GPS, but we don't know if it's the same person.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I also tend to look at. Yeah.
Are there instances where you're doing an analysis, but your analysis tells a really different story from what's happening on the ground? Have you experienced that in any of your projects?
I don't know if I should let her reaction. I should let her go first. Please go first.
A lot. In the agriculture sector, because things keep changing. So you would assume there's a lot of assumption. You go to your desktop analysis and be like, yeah, this area people are growing, for instance, maize.
Yeah.
You go there, you find, things have changed. This is not the maize that they're supposed to be growing. Or you assume this region grows soy.
Yeah.
Then you go down and you find they're growing sorghum. So,
and that's normally, now for example, in that scenario, then the issue is not really the issue. So that means you either probably need to, first of all, there's the validation bit of it. But now I'm wondering is there a way of detecting that before it hits you? There's no, you just have to bump into it after you've done your analysis.
So the risk is, if let's say now, if you don't know a specific area and say, no, I'm going to do analytics of a specific area, and then you find out that they're not doing what you thought they were doing, then that's a problem. That's a problem based on assumption. Yeah. But half of the time, before you go to the field, you need to show a proof of concept.
Yeah.
Before you say, give me money, I need to go to the field and do this work.
Yeah.
Unless you take yourself and say, I'm going to do this work. So mostly it's that you're relying on desktop or research that has been done before, and then you don't know if things have changed. I'll just give an example. Kilifi County used to have a lot of cashews. Now there are no cashews in the area. But maybe you would assume if somebody has not been to Kilifi, they'll be like, no, it's a cashew growing area. So you assume every single tree in the neighborhood
assuming that
is
right
a cashew nut.
You are
Assuming
or
that.
a mango tree.
Yeah.
And then you go to the ground and you find it's not a cashew, it's a mango. So you have high production of mangoes or high production of castor oil or high production of specific tree crops, but you assumed cashews, and cashews have a different growth cycle. So just basically, for me, it's mostly the assumption, but now you have to, it's like 50-50.
Yeah.
I think that also shows the importance of ground truthing and actually working with teams that are actually on the ground and not doing something from Nairobi and assuming that what you know is the truth. It's not the biblical truth. You need to do a lot of ground truthing. You need to be in touch with the communities that you're working with, and you need to work with the locals as well. So you need to put into consideration, like, everything doesn't work perfectly as you expect it to work. Like the issues that will come up, and you need to investigate why. Not assume, we need to do this because it was not done. Investigate first and then see what was the issue, then what is the remedy or the solution to that.
That's so true. I like how both of you have painted it. Data analysis and the realities on the ground are normally, they can be so different. And I've experienced that from a customer mapping perspective, where we send people to the field, and then we also know how sometimes signals and the weather, how it affects sometimes GPS points. And I remember doing an analysis for where our customers are and where we should go. And also confident in giving recommendations. And then you go to the ground and you look at the place you've said, and it's literally dry land. Like, there's no even one shop. And you're just like, what? Didn't I just see this? And that thing for ground truthing and just having, I moved with, now I put disclaimers in my analysis, especially if we've not done any ground truthing. This data is purely informed by desktop analysis. And I would, however, recommend that we go to the field to just verify. And so I like some of the components that have come up. I want us to shift to one very important component, which is the data governance angle of it. And I think that, data governance can be a bit evasive, even in the definition of it. I feel like sometimes that's something that also maybe is not very clear. And I'm wondering how you guys look at data governance from a success angle. What does a successful data governance, I don't call it project, data governance, I guess system look like, right? From both an agriculture, a health perspective, what does that look like? Because I think sometimes there's also a misconception, but is that, I'll let the experts talk about that. Let's get to, I might also be showing, what does success look like for data governance, and why should, especially techies, as we are building these solutions, why should we care about it?
So I think there's data governance, but there's the whole data management system.
Yes.
So data governance is just one of the aspects. So who owns the data? Who manages the data? How is it kept, stored, deleted? That whole process goes with the governance. How the institution wants to use the kind of data, and how are they going to share it with, if they're sharing any kind of data, how do they share it with other people? So it goes based on that particular framework of that institution. From my personal working with some of the organizations and companies that I've worked with, that's what I've typically seen. But I think there is also components such as your security, because there is ownership, and then there is security, and there is privacy, and then there is quality. So all those things tend to tie in. So somebody will be like, no, you need to have a data governance framework. That's fine. Have the framework. But there is also, how do you treat, if let's say there's a breach of data, how do you treat what data is private, what data is not private? How do you share across different organizations? Which data is open, which one is not open? So it's quite a wide thing. And yes, there are particular experts who are in the field through the DAMA framework, they do that particular work. But from my work there's the aspect of privacy that usually comes a lot, sovereignty, sharing,
yes.
and the quality of the data that you have as an organization. But you also need to look at the policies that are underlying. We have the AU, global. Then you do have your country, different type of policies. And now we have like many other policies. We've just been channeling quite a lot of policies lately.
A lot. There's always a new policy every week.
So many.
It's good to help regulate, but at the same time, if you don't know how people are building, then you might be very restrictive in terms of the type of policies that you're putting out there. But you have your data policies in Kenya. They are the global policies.
Yeah.
There are also different regions in terms of the policies. So even as an organization or as a person, if you're working with a specific country, which type of also global policies are you looking at? So that whenever you share data, you can say, I can consistently align with this.
Yeah.
I just also give an example. I have seen it with the Kobo Toolbox. The Kobo Toolbox has two types of, there's a global servers and then the EU. And with EU, they're very restricted. They're very serious with their GDPR. Yes. So those are the things that I would say in terms of governance, you need to look at. Yes, there's internally and then there's externally, your security, your privacy, the sovereignty. Because if you're collecting people data, are you respecting that? Even with organizations, if you're collecting people data, are you registered with the Data Protection Office when you're collecting? So those are the things that many people don't know, but you could be collecting that particular data. If you're using it for especially things to do with how human activity, make sure you guys follow the Data Protection Office or any of the relevant offices so that you can be aligned, or you might not be able to do the work that you're supposed to do in that particular country. Yeah.
That is so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think she's captured just a lot. Like
everything. I think maybe just even I just need to also add, there is also cross-country sharing of data, jurisdiction.
True.
Who owns the data in that particular country? How is it shared? If you have a dispute, where are you going to handle that dispute? In which country are you going to handle that dispute? With lawyers, they'll tell you how tough that thing is. Jurisdiction, data jurisdiction. Yes, you could have a regional office somewhere. But if, let's say, there's also power struggles in terms of countries. The one with the better economy usually tends to have somehow a bigger say. But now how do you look at that? And I think also regional bodies do play a role. If, let's say, you guys are sharing data across different countries, what does the regional body talk about in terms of their data policy and sharing? And how do you handle conflicts or any situation with that data that you're managing? Yeah.
That is so comprehensive on like the things you should even be looking out for. And I like that you mentioned there are policies where you start at like a global level, there's regional and then country level to just be in line with that. I'm curious to know now that we are coming towards the end, on what you guys see as the future in your different species and how you see that evolving, especially from some of the components we've talked about, right? Like there's the realities of working with these data sets, right? And on that other side of the reality, there's the impact that we want to achieve in the different sectors, from health, agriculture, climate, right? And so I'm curious to know, from a future perspective, what elements do you look forward to being that you'd consider untapped, that you think we really need to get into? I know one of the things you mentioned was utilization. Like, utilization is also a thing that we don't talk about. We don't talk about enough. I don't know that about utilization, actually. Sure. I always get stuck at quality. But I'm curious to get your perspective. Now that you've had a front row seat in these sectors, what do you think are the untapped opportunities that we are not looking at from a tech data perspective?
The opportunities.
The untapped ones that you think would really revolutionize public health and agri-tech.
Okay. Geospatial data.
Yes.
Because we handle all data set, but I think mainly when we come to talking about geospatial data, we find organizations utilize data towards the end, visualizing what has already been done, as opposed to having it at the very start of the process in terms of helping you even do your scoping work, integrating it from the word go, understanding where the gaps, helping you move resources better, helping you understand where vulnerabilities are higher in certain regions. And I think that's the main gap that we have, because if you go to most organizations, I remember we've bonded around this a lot. As a geospatial expert, as a geospatial analyst, you come towards the end, you're called to be told, I need a map to put in a report. And you need to be in the rooms when they are talking about this project. We want to start this project, so that you can have that understanding on how do I use geospatial data to help you improve your process, even help you save money. Yeah. You can't be directing resources everywhere like, oh, it's in Kitui County. Not everyone in Kitui County needs a borehole.
Yeah.
That is so
true. It's specific regions. Yeah. So we need to understand that the gap is at the start.
Yes.
Let's bring the geospatial experts, the data experts, the software people at the very beginning, not towards the end. We've decided this is what we want to build, take and build. No, sit at the table, listen, understand what the problem is. That domain knowledge, understanding your problem helps me solve it better.
Yes.
If you tell me to make a map, I'll just make a map. But if I understand your problem, I'll be like, oh, this is not what you're looking for. So I'll help do an analysis and give you a better outcome of what you expect. So that's a gap, I think, that most organizations need to look at, most programs need to look at.
I think it's understanding the type of data set. So, for instance, we have a lot of, and I'll talk in terms of the satellite imagery that we have a lot in space. And a lot is being gathered in raw format, even being pre-processed, so that you don't even have to go through the painful process of cloud masking or whatever thing it is. But nobody understands the value of each particular data that comes from that satellite imagery. So when you talk to a stakeholder and say, I'm going to help you do crop monitoring, they don't know which satellite imagery would be maybe particularly useful at that time to process that image, to process data in that area. So I think understanding the data sets that come in, because everybody just talks about having satellite data, having GIS data, but they don't know what each data set means.
Yeah.
And if you know what each data set means, as Nancy had already put it, then you would be able to say, actually, we can use ABCD data set to determine the costs of transporting goods from one area to another. Or we can use this data set to be able to find areas that require boreholes, create contours, or whatever thing it is that is required on the ground for you to be able to do your work easily. And also save time, because you could say, I want an expensive data set. And then you typically just didn't need that. You needed a free open source available data set, maybe that has a number of years backwards, but you needed maybe a particular thing. So understanding the type of data set. And I don't think, I know many people might not have the time to do it, but we are not doing a good explanation in telling people that these are the different types of data sets that you can use, because we are building. And there's also aspects of your building. You could build on crop insurance, you could build on all these other things, but what type of data set are you building it from? Yeah.
I really like those perspectives. Are there things you guys think we need to do better as geospatial people, as geospatial experts? Because I know you guys have sat at the intersection of programs and strategy, right? So meaning you figured out how to disseminate and communicate what you're doing, right? To push the technology and what the technology can do. But I'm wondering, when you look back, are there things you think we can start doing better to push the impact even further, or to even show what's possible with this knowledge that we have with geospatial data, satellite data, basically, geospatial data? Are there things you think as geo people, or even not just geo people, as techies, are there things you think we need to do better as we wrap up?
Yes.
What do you guys think we need to do better?
There's so many things we all need to do better. And when you're talking of impact, I think we need to have an understanding that impact is not I created a tool. I have this tool, it maps your crop phenology. I don't know, it understands your crop stress. I have this tool that shows where vulnerable populations are. That's good.
DVI for you.
Yes.
PI is negative. Yeah.
By the way, that's good to look at, but is that actual impact? Impact doesn't start there. Impact starts with the unglamorous work on the ground, because you have to do a lot of trust building with communities, with the people you're working with, buy-ins. How do you ensure these tools or these resources or whatever you're building is used consistently for decision making? We built a dashboard 2 years ago and nobody is using. So yes, we were happy we built a dashboard, but is it being utilized? So we need to move from being so happy that, yes, I built a tool, and start doing that hard work of making sure it's being adopted. And there's a sustainability to it. And to add to that, that we stop piloting so many things. We need to scale.
Thank you.
We need to scale what is already, if you're going to solve a solution, the first thing you do is trying to understand, what is there, what has already been built. And you find there's so many things that have been piloted, they worked, but then they stopped there. So you're starting to build another tool again. Can we invest in terms of scaling what already works? I know it's an expensive, even doing a pilot is costly. Having worked in these communities and seeing how people do the budgeting, and you're it's not cheap. It's costly, but then it's more costly if we are piloting so many things, funding so many people in different areas, as opposed to bringing them together and ensuring this one solution that works, we scale it up. If there's a problem with whatever we were building, let's try and solve that problem, not to try and go and build something else. Yes. So I think that's something we are all guilty of. Even me, when I started, I did a map, and then everybody was like, oh yes. I was like, yes, I built a map, they love it. But then why is it?
I like that. Yours, patting?
Patting. I would say typically the same.
Better,
typically it's the same aspects the way Nancy has put it. I think the ground, just making sure that you have buy-in on the ground. That's the most important thing. Also, utilization of the tool. I know the most key thing. She said, I know where she's coming from with, we are building a lot of tools. I get it. And scaling those particular tools. I think the scaling part is where people don't see, I don't know if they don't see the value, or they just want to go on to the next thing. And we don't have the patience these days, because we have to get there faster so that we can get, if it's funding or money or any other thing, instead of saying, actually, if we have a build-up of this particular tool, we are able to still have a whole history of where the data came from, how has it grown, what are we actually getting out of it. So more of the buy-in, the building, scalability, and not just building for the sake of building. I think that's my issue is, don't build for the sake of building. Build for impact for that particular thing.
All right. That was really insightful, guys. Thank you so much for, first of all, saying yes to come into the pod. I know video can be a bit overwhelming. But thank you so much for coming in and sharing such powerful insights about the space you work in. So guys who've tuned in, this once again was Nancy Kinyua and Lisa Mbwia, who are geospatial experts that sit at the intersection of public health, agri-tech, and climate. And we've had a really insightful conversation. So if you're keen on the realities of working with data in a fast-moving environment that informs public policy, programs, strategic decisions, then this is the episode for you. We've really unpacked a lot, and they really unpacked what it looks like, the space between data and real-world outcome, and what pushing the needle looks like from these key sectors, health and agri-tech. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe, share, let us know what you think of this conversation. Their LinkedIns are the same, Nancy Kinyua and Lisa Mbwia. Follow them on LinkedIn, engage, and let us know what you think of this conversation. Until next time, bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you for having us. It was awesome. Thank you. It was awesome.
This is the Geo Habari podcast.